The four great vows are the Bodhisattva Vows, heart really of the Bodhisattva way, of which Zen is, in its way, a part. What kind of part? We often say that we have to understand these vows as koans. And yeah, that's maybe good, maybe true. But I think often we're invited to see them as koans in what I would say was maybe, dare I say it, the wrong way, certainly not the most helpful way. Let's remind ourselves. And this is in the version, the translation, which we use in our Ordinary Mind Sangha here. Creatures are numberless, we vow to free them. Delusions are endless, we vow to transform them. Dharma doors are countless, we vow to enter them. The awakened way is unsurpassable, we vow to embody it. That's actually a slightly modified version of the Kaz Tanahashi and Joan Halifax translation that they use at Upaya and many other centres. Now I'll explain later exactly the tweak, the adjustment to the translation. And of course we also chant in Sino-Japanese because that's the way it's been done for 1,000 years. Shujo muhen seigan do, bonno mujin seigan dan, ho mon muryo seigan gaku, butsudo mujo seigan jo. What do we chant? Why do we chant something which is 1,000 years old? Actually more like 1,500, this actual version of the Chinese chant. It's associated with Zhi Yi, the founder of the Tiantai school, who was active at the end of the 6th century. So, that is a long time ago. And the fact is, we are not monks. We do not live in ancient China. We don't share their cosmology. We don't share their science. We don't share their ethics. We don't show their understanding, either intellectual or just as innate responses to the world. So why would we chant this stuff? And I'm posing that's a serious question. It's an active question because how do we make this ours? How do we make this part of our practice? In what way is their path our path? How do we make this meaningful for us? So I think that's the first sense in which we can talk about these vows being a koan, being a set of koans. And like all koans, there's no obvious or easy answer. At a certain level we chant because that's part of our practice. At a certain level we chant because we're showing solidarity, continuity. At a certain level we chant because we're sharing the sound, the shaping of the words, our breath, their breath. That's real continuity for you. And yet we are different beings and this is a different world. And so we are remaking, holding and maintaining, as the opening the sutras chant says. But to hold and maintain these vows is always to make them anew. Where do we begin to take this apart? I mean, we could start with the idea of vow, couldn't we? Okumura, in his Living by Vow, wonderful book covering all of the basic Zen chants, points to the fact that in Japan, or in the Zen tradition, certainly and in the West, have very different senses of vow. In the West, that tends to be as a promise, I shall, I will. And I'd actually link that to the idea of debt, that once I've made this vow, I owe something, I am in debt. And the weight that brings in a sense of obligation. Perhaps not always helpful. These vows, perhaps we are better thinking of in terms of an orientation, a direction. Thich Nhat Hanh always used the image of the pole star, and yeah, I think it's an image I like. We set our direction. We have something to steer by with these vows. There's no sense in which we're ever going to reach the pole star, the North Pole. But we orient ourselves, we take our direction, and we are guided. We literally have somewhere to go. In terms of this other notion of the promise, the debt, I mean, this relates very closely to what my teacher, Barry Majid, always talks about as finding ourselves a day late and a dollar short, and this fundamental sense of lack, which brings us to practice, but at the same time, the attempt to fix ourselves through our practice actually buries that practice, frustrates that practice, blocks that practice, and the working through of our fantasies about what practice will bring us is really the substance of our practice for years. So maybe we don't go down the route of promise and debt and being a day late and a dollar short. Maybe we stick with the idea of direction, orientation, being given guidance. And we remember that we're told that Shakyamuni said, that which we lean towards we become. Yes, this is the direction. So they're offering us a direction. And I said that these vows are often taken as koans, and that there was a sense in which maybe this was less helpful. It's an interesting sense still, the sense of, very obviously, they are unfulfillable. Creatures are numberless. We vow to free them. Free them all. Huh? How are we going to do that? Delusions are endless. We vow to transform them. Yes, every last one. Really? Dharma doors are countless. We vow to enter them. Well, if I can find one, I'm doing well. The awakened way is unsurpassable. The awakened way, of course, is the Buddha way. Manifesting as Buddha, we vow to embody it. Of course I do. Or not. And so we're asked to work with the impossibility of this. And Okumura's nice image, faced with this impossibility, well, I do what I can. It doesn't matter. There's no point saying, oh, he's doing so much better than I am. No, faced with the infinitude of this vow, this aspiration, what can I achieve? Effectively nothing. So I do it anyway. Maybe that's a nice sense. But if we take the original sense, these vows were absolutely serious. They're absolutely literal in that sense. They talk about the Bodhisattva path, the being that vows. And remember, we're talking a multiple lifetime, an infinite number of lives in that sense. I vow that in a gazillion eons, I will realise myself as a full bodhisattva and be able to, in that sense, save all beings. Last week, when we were talking about the at-one-ment gata, the atonement gata, we're referencing, it comes from Samantabhadra's vow at the end of the Avatamsaka Sutra. And this great vow, which is the definition of the Buddha, of the Bodhisattva path. This is what I'm going to do. Well, the paradox here is maybe the intention, but the aspiration is deadly serious. But who speaks? Is it the great, fully realised Bodhisattva? Is it little me? Who speaks? Let's take another version. This is from Shantidevas, so Indian and adopted to the Tibetan tradition, so not our Zen path. But, this is another, I think, beautiful evocation of the aspiration of the Bodhisattva. May I be the medicine and the physician for the sick. May I be an inexhaustible treasury for the destitute. May I become food and drink in times of famine. May I be a protector for those who have no protection, a guide for travellers, and a boat, a bridge, and a ship for this who wish to cross over. May I be a lamp for those who seek light. This is no small aspiration. And this is at the heart of the Bodhisattva Vows. And note that it doesn't just talk about spreading the Dharma. May I be a boat. May I be a bridge. Well, bridge building was actually one of the major activities of the Chinese emperors who became Buddhists. Public works, good works, useful things, trying to work practically on suffering. So it's not just about realising the Dharma. But that realisation of the Dharma in oneself, in this being, is part of the Bodhisattva path. And of course, the real koan of the Bodhisattva path, the fundamental one, referred to last time in terms of the at-one-ment gata as well. This paradox that the wisdom teachings, the teachings on emphasis, remind us that at the end of the day, there are no beings to save. No one to save them, and no saving can be done, no freeing, however we want to talk about it. How does this work? And of course, the sense in which I'm trying to offer an understanding of this, because I think it's important, is the sense of emptiness as non-separation. That if we see ourselves as non-separate from world and act as non-separate from world, the koan resolves through our activity, through our lives, not something we, oh yes, now I understand it all, but we gain a perspective on life. And we'll talk more about this shift of perspective as I go on. So within this non-separation, we can come back to this question of who speaks. If we're thinking just in terms of no beings to free and no one to free them, then what do we make of intention? What do we make of aspiration? But if we accept ourselves as non-separate, this is what is implied by the whole notion of emptiness. It's not me saving you, or you saving me, or me freeing you, or me helping you, or you helping me. It's us acting together. And in that sense, we resolve the being by realizing that we are not separate, because that's what emptiness means in reality. It's interesting. Of course, in the version that we have, the Sino-Japanese, which takes, the kanji, we call them in Japanese, but the Chinese ideographs, and the way that classical Chinese expresses itself, there is no tense, there is no person or number. So the first line just basically says something along the lines of living beings not countable, the vow is made. Free them. Free or save or... Well, actually, this do, which we have at the end of that line, is paramitize, taking to the other shore. Freeing, saving by taking living beings to the other shore, taking ourselves to the other shore. Well, what's the first thing we know about going to the other shore? We're already there. That's the kind of root paradox of the path. But that's the activity. What do we mean by this? Well, at one level we can mean the reduction, the elimination of various kinds of the infinity of sufferings which we experience as living beings, which all living beings experience. And in terms also, we can talk about the centrality of that, of this perspective shift, this shift from experiencing ourselves as entirely separate beings to not separate, not one, not strangely merged with the whole universe. Well, I'm this, but not separate from you, not separate from them, not separate from anything. Not one, not two. We have various ways of trying to express this. It's not ultimately something really to be understood in that sense, unless we mean in a deeper, embodied sense, which manifests itself as who we are, as our being in the world. So who speaks? Well, the way in which we've modified the Tanahashi Halifax translation is to change I for we. Creatures are numberless, we vow to free them, because we are ultimately not separate, which is the we of this Sangha, the we of all beings, the we that we vow with countless generations of those who went before us, because we're not separate. And we stress that, and that realization of non-separation is an aspect of our participation in the Bodhisattva path, the Bodhisattva way, in a way that is completely non-mystical. It's absolutely straightforward. We are absolutely straightforwardly not separate. Therefore, it entitles us to say we, because this is us. This is something we do. One traditional Zen way, this actually comes from Taoism, is to talk in terms of Wu Wei, which is no, translate it in various ways, but it's kind of no effort, no thinking, no action which is no action. Of course, it's obviously action, but and this sense of effortless spontaneity, which goes along with the fantasy that when I achieve enlightenment, I will spontaneously and completely freely know exactly what to do in all situations. I will merely respond with appropriate action. I think this is actually one of the most damaging, going back to Barry again, curative fantasies on offer, because, how's that working out for you, whether you think you're enlightened or not? You can look through great masters, you can look through contemporary teachers, we can reflect on our own experience. It's not that simple. Okumura's teacher, Uchiyama, actually has a nice image which takes us in a rather different direction, which I like, which is Uchiyama used to like to talk about driving. It's like driving a car, he says. When you're driving a car, you're not constantly thinking, brake, clutch, accelerator, indicate, check in the mirror. No, you do that as an integrated whole. That's just the spontaneous expression of driving. You don't go, oh no, there's a car coming towards me, what shall I do? You just adjust, you do it. You don't go, there's a bend coming up, help, what do I do? How many degrees shall I turn the steering wheel? No, you just do it. But this isn't natural, this isn't innate, this isn't spontaneous in that sense. It's something we do as a result of, for some of us, an immense amount of study, thousands of hours of practice. We have to learn the highway code. We have to understand what the other drivers are going to do. It's the same with anything, isn't it? Learning a skill, learning a martial art. Doesn't matter. At a certain level, it becomes integrated. We can talk about mastery in this sense. Very different kind of sense of mastery than domination. We become part of it. We become literally part of the practice. The practice becomes part of us. But it's a practice which opens out into the world, and it is a practice of which we are a part. And actually, let's stick with the idea of driving for a moment, because I think this is quite interesting. I came across a very obvious comment a few years ago, which just kind of struck me as a perfect image of the shift of perspective from separate to not separate. And it's like, okay, when you're stuck in traffic, do you think of yourselves as stuck in a traffic jam? Or do you think of yourselves, oh, I'm part of this jam? As in, are all these other drivers on the road part of some huge conspiracy to stop me going where I want to? Why are they driving at this time? Why are they on this bit of road? Or, oh look, too many of us wanted to go along the same bit of road at the same time. Oh, what's the best strategy here? How can I help? That's an insight. That's a real, genuine moment of insight about the difference between separate and not separate, and our response to that. And of course that relies on us having integrated and mastered the art of driving. But it's asking us to extend this further in the direction of the real, true recognition of our non-separation from other beings. And we might even want to take this further. We might think, why am I doing this journey anyway? Do I need to go there? Could I have used the bus? Why is the thing that I want to go to over there and not over there? And why isn't, if it's a shop, why isn't there a supermarket within walking distance or a post office or whatever? We might think about town planning. And it's just like, this is all part of, not separate. Part of this is fluid integrated action. Part of this involves actual reflection, concrete thought. And the truth is that we are all not separate. We are all on the other shore, which is this shore. but we think we aren't, and we very often act as if we aren't. Whether that's instinctively and reflexively, or whether that's as a conscious activity. So, going to the other shore, freeing delusions. Actually, these are the kleshas of classical Buddhism: the greed, hatred, delusion, ignorance, however we want to figure them, and we talked a little bit about that in connection with the atonement kata last time. Are we ever going to get rid of those entirely? Well, no, but they're the matter with which we work. And this comes back to Joko Beck's core teachings about it's the resistance of being a deluded being. This is what we work with. And when we come to those Dharma doors, well, as we'll chant with the practice principles at the end of this talk, life as it is, the only teacher. And in terms of Dharma doors, yes, we talk about sutras, we talk about zazen, we talk about the birds, we talk about the babbling of the brook, the hum of the traffic, the barking dog, or whatever. It's all offering Dharma teaching. Even this talk is offering Dharma teaching. But life as it is, the whole of life as it is, our core teacher, our root teacher. I guess it's really important to realise that this sense of orientation and direction, because we're always going somewhere. Life is taking us somewhere, whether that's as an individual or collectively. And there's the classic Chinese saying about, hope we don't live in interesting times. Well, we're certainly living in interesting times at the moment, and they're hellish, worrying times. What directions are we going on? We can see aspiration, we can see the intention that takes as problematic. We can even say it is dangerous, which potentially it is. Let's rush off and save the world. Oh, yeah. It's not going to work quite like that, is it? But at the same time, we are going in a direction, and within the limits of where we get to choose, we need to choose. Keep calm and carry on. Posters, mugs, tea towels, whatever. And there's a sense in which, yes, that's absolutely vital, and that's the Bodhisattva way. Keep calm, carry on. But it's not don't think, it's not keep your head down, it's not business as usual, because business as usual just isn't possible, even if sometimes it has seemed for some of us. So what do we do? Well, that's the question, isn't it? That's always the question. Can we bear witness? Can we participate? Just read the Shantideva again. May I be the medicine and the physician for the sick. May I be an inexhaustible treasury for the destitute. May I become food and drink in times of famine. May I be a protector for those who have no protection, a guide for travellers in a boat, a bridge, and a ship for those who wish to cross over to the other shore, where they already are. May I be a lamp for those who seek light. What does that mean to us? And again, let's go back to what Okumura was saying. This isn't, I did this much and you did that much. It's no. What does this mean to us? How do I approach this? Talking of difficult times and talking of the importance of bearing witness, and seemed somehow verging on appropriate on the day when we perhaps, for however short or hopefully however long the time, we have peace, or peace-ish, in Gaza. Thought I'd read us the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust version of Martin Niemöller's famous little poem, which is in some ways so famous it's a cliche, it's commonplace, and yet no less absolutely true and no less absolutely vital for that. So, first they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. And then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. In actual fact, Niemöller was a very conservative Protestant Lutheran pastor. Certainly not a communist, a socialist, or a trade unionist. And then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. Let's sit.